It was a Friday afternoon, and we had left New York. Melanie and I had just dropped off our only daughter, Jennifer, at her college to start her first year. I was behind the wheel of our Ford Transit van. "Time really flies," Melanie said, her voice tinged with a sense of nostalgia. It seemed like it was just yesterday when Jennifer graduated from high school and Melanie discovered she was expecting. At that time, I was still working my way through college to earn my engineering degree, and both of our parents were incredibly supportive, understanding how much we cared for each other. When Jennifer was born, Melanie stayed with her parents while I finished my degree, and after graduation, we got married. Since then, Melanie has stayed home with the kids, while I worked my way up from a junior engineer to owning my own HVAC business over the past decade. All my hard work had led to steady contracts in construction, which helped keep our family well supported. "The house is going to feel so empty without her," I said, a touch of sadness creeping into my voice. "She's always been your little princess," Melanie answered sharply. "But have you noticed how she treats me? When you're around, she clings to you and mocks me. When you're not here, she shuts herself in her room and hardly acknowledges my presence." "Come on, Melanie," I responded, trying to brush it off. "She's just going through a phase." Senior year was tough, especially with all that pressure to get into Columbia. "We should cut her some slack." "I understand that, Derek," Melanie said, "but you don't see the way she looks at me, like she can't stand me." "You're blowing this out of proportion, Melanie," I replied flatly. Melanie didn't argue but fell silent, sensing my irritation. Not one to press, she turned her attention to her phone, typing something. "We'll be home in 30 minutes, she murmured. A moment later, her phone pinged. "Was that from Jennifer?" I asked. "No, it's from Rebecca. She's complaining again about Levi always working late and putting everyone else first. She knew what she was getting into marrying a sheriff," Melanie responded, changing the subject. As we turned into the driveway, I noticed a sheriff's car parked in front of our garage. I pulled in behind it and saw Levi step out of the car with his assistant to greet us. "What's going on here?" I asked, puzzled. Melanie instantly changed her posture, standing behind Levi's assistant, an odd reaction that didn't escape my notice. "This is the part of my job I hate the most," Levi said as he handed me a manila envelope. "Derek Croftoon, consider yourself served. Is this some kind of joke, Levi?" I turned toward Melanie, but she avoided looking me in the eyes. "Why, Melanie? What have I done?" I asked, confusion and hurt creeping into my voice. "It's best if you leave, Derek," Levi said firmly. "You'll need to get a lawyer and prepare for divorce proceedings. There's also a restraining order in place, so you're not allowed to come near Melanie or within 500 feet of her. Levi, just last Sunday, you and Rebecca were at Jennifer's farewell barbecue." I shot back, anger rising in my chest. "You both knew what was going on, yet you sat there, ate, and left smiling. Hypocrites, all of you." "Derek, please, just try to understand," Levi began, trying to calm the situation. "Understand what, Levi? That you're a traitor?" I shouted. "And Melanie, you betrayed me. If you wanted out, you could have just said so. We could have gotten a divorce without all this drama. The restraining order is already in effect. It's best for you to leave now," Levi said, his tone unshaken. I stormed off toward the van, tossing the envelope onto the passenger seat before returning to confront him. "I'm going to grab my things from the house. You're not stopping me from taking what's mine," I snapped. I pulled out my house key and headed for the front door. "That won't work," Levi said, showing me a new set of keys and handing them to his assistant. "We've thought of everything." I scoffed. "Or did Rebecca set up a locksmith while we were gone?" Levi didn't answer, just nodded at his assistant, who followed me inside as I packed 2 suitcases. "Don't worry," Levi reassured Melanie. "I'll have deputies keep an eye on the house. It's not safe for you to be alone right now. Derek's upset and might do something reckless." "I'll be fine. I'll have a friend stay with me for the weekend," Melanie said, a smug smile crossing her face. "Oh, a friend," Levi muttered under his breath. I carried the suitcases to the van, placing them inside. The assistant handed Melanie the new keys. Then, I opened the envelope and glanced through the divorce papers. "Derek, you've got your things. It's time for you to leave," Levi said. Hold on a second. This woman wants half my business, half the savings, the house, her car, and alimony. I shouted, my anger boiling over. She's trying to take everything I've worked for. Derek, if you don't leave now, I'll have to arrest you, Levi warned, his hand hovering near his handcuffs. Fine, Levi, I muttered through clenched teeth, quickly signing my name. Melanie, you got what you wanted. Can you witness this and give me a copy? Levi and his assistant looked taken aback. They hadn't expected me to comply so easily. Melanie's face lit up with smug satisfaction, clearly enjoying her victory. Levi signed off as a witness and handed me my copy. As I climbed into the van, rage boiling inside me, I shot one last question at Melanie. Who is he, Melanie? How long has this been going on? Inside, Melanie, Levi ordered, motioning for his assistant to lead her away. Think about Jennifer, Derek. Don't do anything stupid, Levi pleaded as he made his way back to the van. I regret ever marrying that woman. I shouted as I started the engine. She wanted a divorce because I wouldn't agree to an open marriage like you. What are you talking about? Levi asked, taken aback. Oh, don't act surprised, Levi. Everyone knows, I replied. Your brother Matt practically takes your place when you're on night shifts. You're trying to pit me against my brother? Sorry, Levi, but she's cheating on you. A sheriff like you should be able to spot a liar. Go home, confront Rebecca, and you'll see for yourself, I said as I reversed out of the driveway. After I left, Melanie poured herself a glass of wine and admired Panyal's the train station hanging on the wall, a pricey piece I had left behind. His loss, she said with a devious grin. She picked up her phone and dialed a number, annoyed when it went to voicemail. Pick up Kevin, she muttered. He was supposed to be here by now. She grumbled as she took a sip of wine and settled into a chair. Her mind wandered back to the day she met him, nearly a year ago, in the shoe section at the department store. Young, fit, and full of energy, Melanie had felt an immediate connection. They exchanged numbers, and the very next day, he showed up at her door during his lunch break. Kevin brought excitement into her life, a feeling that I had never quite managed to give her. While I was stuck working long hours and came home exhausted, helping Jennifer with her homework, Melanie sat at home with unmet needs, feeling dissatisfied and frustrated. On her second glass of wine, Melanie tried calling Kevin again, but once again, it went unanswered. Frustrated, she tossed her phone onto the couch and turned on the TV, though she couldn't seem to concentrate on anything. Melanie had a key to his apartment, spent time there cleaning for him, bought him gifts, and even let him take her prized BMW for drives. Oh, I need him, she muttered to herself, the depth of her longing taking over. Kevin was everything, and tonight, he was supposed to move in with her. This was the new life she had been waiting for, the freedom she had worked so hard to find. After the shower, Melanie returned to the living room, grabbed her phone, and cursed under her breath as she dialed again. Where are you, Kevin? Why won't you pick up? Annoyed, she wandered into the kitchen and decided to make herself a light dinner. If only I could just drive over there, she murmured to herself. But just then, something on the TV caught her attention. She rushed back to the couch, turning up the volume, her heart sinking as she saw Levi, handcuffed, being escorted to a police car. The news anchor's voice echoed through the room. Sheriff Levi Ellington has been arrested for the shooting of his wife and brother, killing both. Melanie's hand flew to her mouth in shock, and she quickly turned off the TV, her mind spinning. Oh, Rebecca, I warned you, she whispered to herself, her eyes brimming with tears. That night, Melanie lay awake, feeling more isolated than ever. Her husband was gone, her lover unreachable, her best friend dead, her daughter distant and angry, and her parents long gone. The only person left was her sister, who lived 300 miles away with her husband, Matt. Saturday came, and there was still no word from Kevin. Melanie's frustration grew. He could at least send a text, she thought, pacing back and forth. By Sunday morning, her patience had completely worn out. She decided to drive to Kevin's apartment to confront him. As soon as she stepped inside, though, a wave of dread washed over her. The place was bare. His electronics were gone, the closets were empty, and the bathroom had been stripped clean. She collapsed onto his bed, sobbing uncontrollably. "He's gone. He just left," she whispered. "After everything, he's the one who pushed for the divorce, for us to move in together, even talked about marriage when it was already over." Desperate for answers, she went to the department store where Kevin worked, but a coworker only told her that Kevin had left early Friday morning, saying he'd forgotten his wallet and hadn't come back. Later, she found out that he had resigned via email. Defeated, Melanie made her way back to her car, tears streaming down her face. "Why, Kevin? Why did you do this to me?" she cried. On the way home, Melanie stopped at a gas station, only to find that both her credit and debit cards were declined. Irritated, she paid with the little cash she had left and continued her drive home, where she drank herself into a stupor that night. By Monday morning, Melanie was at the bank, demanding answers. The manager told her there was less than $5 left in their joint account. "Mrs. Crofton, your husband came in last Friday and closed the joint credit card," he explained calmly. "He mentioned the divorce and said he didn't want to be responsible for the mortgage or the car payments anymore." "That's not possible," Melanie shot back. "My car was paid off already, and the house mortgage was supposed to be settled." The manager's face softened. "Unfortunately, there's a car loan under your name and a second mortgage on your home, likely for your daughter's tuition. But why is there no money left?" Melanie pressed, her voice rising with panic. The manager nodded sympathetically. "The mortgage payments have been coming out automatically, but for the past 3 months, there have been no deposits made. The balance has been drained." "What about my husband's business? Shouldn't there be transfers from there?" Melanie asked, her desperation building. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Crofton, but I'm unable to provide any details about Mr. Crofton's accounts or his business. However, if the next mortgage payment isn't made, the house and car could be repossessed." Melanie's voice trembled as she protested. "But I don't have a job." The manager remained calm. "It would be a good idea to consult with your lawyer, ma'am." Melanie felt the weight of the situation pressing down on her. She went to check the safe deposit box she shared with me, but all she found was her jewelry. She stuffed it into her bag and then stepped outside to try calling my phone, but it was disconnected. Frustrated and running out of options, she called Jennifer's number. "What do you want, witch?" Jennifer snapped on the other end. "Is that how you talk to your mother?" Melanie asked, shocked by her daughter's hostility. "How else am I supposed to talk to you?" Jennifer retorted. "You dumped Dad without thinking twice. I'm done with you. Don't call me again. I'm changing my number." The line went dead before Melanie could respond. She sat in the car, gripping the steering wheel, overwhelmed. Why had Kevin disappeared? Where had it all gone wrong? Desperate for answers, Melanie managed to get a same-day appointment with her lawyer for that afternoon. When she arrived, her lawyer greeted her with a serious expression. "Mrs. Crofton, we've looked into your husband's business as you asked. He filed for bankruptcy last Thursday, just before you served him with divorce papers. The company will likely be dissolved." Melanie's chest tightened in disbelief. "But you told me I'd get millions," she stammered, her voice shaky. "Please, Mrs. Crofton, try to stay calm. Just 2 weeks ago, everything seemed fine. There were no red flags. But now, the company's bank accounts are frozen. What about the house and the car?" Melanie asked, feeling trapped. "Last week, your husband used the house as collateral for a loan. As for the car, when you signed the papers, you unknowingly took out a loan in your name." "No, this can't be happening," she cried, feeling everything she had worked for slip away. The lawyer studied her with a thoughtful expression. "Mrs. Crofton, may I ask, do you think your husband knew he was about to be served?" She paused before answering. "No, I'm sure he had no idea," she whispered, taking a deep breath. "So, just to summarize, I won't get anything from his business, there's barely any money left in the bank, and both the house and the car are at risk?" "Unfortunately, yes," the lawyer confirmed. "Can't I at least make him pay the mortgage?" she pleaded, her voice filled with desperation. His business was his only source of income, and now it's gone. Once he finds new work, we can pursue alimony. As for investments, we'll need to investigate further. There were some investment certificates, but I couldn't find them in the deposit box," Melanie murmured, almost to herself. We'll track down when he cashed them and thoroughly check his company's financials. We'll also need to locate your husband, and his legal advisor is already working on that. Please go ahead, she replied faintly. One last thing, Mrs. Croftoon, the lawyer said. These additional services will incur extra costs. How do you plan to cover them? Melanie thought for a moment, then remembered. I have a valuable painting. Perfect. Sell it and get us a check so we can move forward. Fine. I'll take care of it, she said, resigned. Before you leave, Mrs. Croftoon, there's one more thing. The lawyer's voice took on a somber tone. In the worst-case scenario, you may need to leave your home. It would be wise to start looking for a new place. Back at the house, Melanie sat before the prized Betrayal painting. I wanted to keep you, but thanks to that husband of mine, we have to part ways, she muttered bitterly to the canvas. She picked up her phone and dialed her sister's number. Hey sis, I need a favor. You know I'd do anything for you, Melanie. Derek and I are getting a divorce, Melanie said, struggling to keep her voice steady. What? Are you serious? Yes, it's complicated, but I need somewhere to stay for a while. Could I crash in your guest room? I'll explain everything when I get there. And what about Jennifer? How's she handling this? She's always been a daddy's girl. Somehow, I'm the one taking all the blame. I'm really sorry, Melanie. That sounds rough. As for staying here, it's no problem at all. Matt probably won't mind, and our daughter will love having you around for a while, her sister reassured her. Thanks, sis. I'll let you know when I'm heading over, Melanie replied, trying to sound grateful. Ending the call, Melanie wasted no time. By Tuesday, she was at a jeweler's, hoping to cash in her jewelry collection. But instead of the windfall she'd hoped for, the jeweler shook his head. Sorry, ma'am. These pieces are all gold-plated copper and worth next to nothing. Fury bubbled up inside her. Fake gifts, she cursed, imagining her husband's audacity in deceiving her. But she wasn't ready to give up. She hurried to an art gallery for an appraisal on her painting. I'd like to know the value of my Betrayal, the train station, she said, praying this treasure would turn out to be genuine. The appraiser carefully examined the painting under a spotlight, using a magnifying glass to inspect every detail. He took his time, then let out a soft chuckle. What's so funny? Melanie asked, her anxiety growing. Let me show you, the appraiser said, opening his laptop and displaying a high-quality image of the original train station. He pointed to the bottom left corner. Here, you see a man and a young girl on the platform, watching a woman walk away. The man looks devastated, and the girl is crying. Melanie nodded impatiently. Yes, I see it. So what? The appraiser handed her the magnifying glass. Now compare that to your painting. Melanie's heart sank as she peered closer. In her version, the man and little girl were grinning, pointing at the woman as if mocking her. This one's a fake, the appraiser concluded flatly. Oh my God, Melanie whispered, collapsing into a chair, defeated once more. I can offer you $200 for it, he said, his voice sympathetic. Maybe it'll be a fun conversation piece. With no other choice, Melanie reluctantly accepted the small sum and left, her spirits crushed. Just as she reached her car, her phone rang. It was her sister. Hi, sis, Melanie answered, trying to mask the despair in her voice. Don't call me sis, you snake. Her sister snapped furiously. Wait, what's going on? Melanie stammered, caught off guard. Matt got an email, sent by some stranger, that was shared with everyone we know. It's a link to a website. There are videos, Melanie, of you and some guy, and they go back a whole year, right up until last week. How could you do this? Her sister's voice was filled with disgust. Melanie stammered, panic setting in. Spare me. You did it in our bed and in some cheap motel. Matt says he doesn't want you near us anymore. You'll just ruin our family, her sister continued. Melanie's world seemed to stop. She could hardly breathe as her sister's final words hit her. We don't want you here. Go to your lover. The call ended abruptly, leaving Melanie in shock. Her hands trembled as she held the phone. They know. Everyone must know, she muttered, feeling her secret unravel. Panic surged inside her. I have to get out of here, she thought, her composure slipping. 5 years later, I sat in the front row of a church, reflecting on the unexpected call I had received that very morning. I decided to keep it to myself, not wanting to overshadow the most important day of Jennifer's life. I had just walked her down the aisle, and now I watched as she exchanged vows with the love of her life. The memories from 5 years ago, though painful, were still fresh in my mind. Back then, I was in my office, absorbed in work, when Jennifer's tearful voice broke the silence. "Dad, please come home," she sobbed. "Sweetheart, what's wrong? Why are you crying?" I asked, alarmed. "Just come, Dad. I'm outside the house," she pleaded. Worry flooded my chest. "Why outside? What happened? Should I call your mom?" "No, don't call her. Just hurry, Dad," she urged, her voice full of panic. "I'm on my way, honey," I promised, my heart pounding as I sped home. Why was she outside the house? Was she hurt? My mind raced, and I barely stopped myself from running a red light. When I arrived, Jennifer was standing on the sidewalk, 1 block from the house. She climbed into the car, her face blotchy from crying. "Please don't go to the house, Dad," she begged. "All right, Jennifer," I said, shutting off the engine. "Now, tell me what's going on." She took a shaky breath and began. "I forgot my USB this morning and got permission to go home and grab it during lunch. When I got there, I saw an old Honda in the driveway. I went inside and heard noises coming from your bedroom. I crept up the stairs and peeked through the open door." "Take your time, sweetheart," I said, trying to calm her. Her face crumpled as she continued. "I saw Mom with some man. They were in your bed together. She's cheating on you, Dad. She betrayed both of us." The reality of what Jennifer had witnessed hit me like a ton of bricks. "Are you absolutely sure about what you saw?" I asked. She held up her phone, her hands shaking. "I recorded it," she said. My heart shattered as I watched the undeniable proof of Melanie in our bedroom. "Dad, please make her leave. I can't stand to see her. She's not my mom. My real mom would never do this to us," Jennifer cried, her pain and anger clear in her voice. "I need to process this," I replied, struggling to keep my composure. "What's there to process?" she demanded. "Just throw her out." "It's not that simple, Jen. There are legal steps we have to take," I explained, though my emotions were in turmoil. "Do you still want to stay married to her? After everything she's done?" Jennifer asked, her voice thick with hurt and anger. "I don't believe in what she's done, but we need to understand why this happened," I said, unsure of what to feel. If it was a one-time mistake, or if this has been going on all along, I thought, letting the possibilities weigh heavily on me. Just then, Jennifer pointed to the driveway. "Look, there he is," she whispered, nodding toward the Honda pulling away from the house. "Let's follow him," I decided, starting the engine without hesitation. We tailed him to a local store, where he parked, changed into a work uniform, and headed inside. "So, he works here," I said, observing him from a distance. "He's pretty young, isn't he?" "Age doesn't matter," Jennifer muttered, snapping photos of him and his car. "At least we know a little more now," I said. "I'll drop you off at school, grab your flash drive from home, and bring it to you. When I talk to your mother—" "She's not my mom," Jennifer cut in sharply. "Fine, when I talk to Melanie, I'll just say you called and asked me to bring it. I don't want you dealing with her alone right now. Got it?" "I get it, but why keep it quiet?" Jennifer asked, clearly curious. "Because I don't want her to suspect that we know anything. If you get too angry, you might accidentally let something slip." "What's the plan, Dad? I want to be kept in the loop on everything." "I'm putting security cameras in the house," I assured her. "And don't worry, Princess. I'll keep you updated on everything." "I love you, Dad." "Love you too. Now, let's get you to school, and I'll be back with your USB in no time." After dropping Jennifer off, I drove back home, bracing myself for the confrontation. When I stepped inside, I called out, "Honey, I'm home." Melanie quickly emerged from the bedroom, looking caught off guard. "Oh, Derek, it's you. Who else did you expect?" I asked, giving her a hard look. "I just didn't expect you back so soon." Jennifer called. She left her flash drive here. I need to bring it to her. As I approached, I noticed the strong scent of her perfume in the air. "Can we talk?" I pressed, studying her face closely. "Talk? I'm exhausted from cleaning, and I'm all sweaty." "You wouldn't want that, and Jennifer's waiting for her USB," she replied, looking uneasy and evasive. "You're right," I said coolly, turning and heading back out the door. At work, I wasted no time. I researched the best surveillance equipment and cell phone monitoring tools, then headed to an electronics store to buy everything I needed. It became clear to me in that moment that my trust in Melanie was gone. As promised, I shared each discovery with Jennifer. Over the next few months, we pieced together the full story. Melanie's lover was Kevin Lamberts, and he had become a regular presence in our home, stopping by almost daily while I was at work, or even on weekends when Melanie claimed she was out shopping. She had a spare key to his apartment and visited him whenever he wasn't working. Through phone calls, I overheard Melanie and her friend Rebecca sharing secrets, including Rebecca's affair with her own husband's brother. One Saturday, while Melanie was out, I found the spare key in her handbag and made a copy. With the duplicate key in hand, I paid Kevin's place a visit. It was in a run-down area, lacking security cameras, with the main entrance left unlocked. Inside, I secretly installed small hidden cameras powered by long-lasting batteries. I also noticed the expensive gifts Melanie had been showering him with, each one a painful reminder of her betrayal. Determined to end our relationship on my terms, I began preparing for a plan that would make Melanie and Kevin face the consequences. I had a goldsmith make replicas of all her jewelry, now knowing that it was all gold-plated copper. I even had a replica of the Panyol painting made, so convincing that no one would ever suspect it wasn't the real thing. Then, I turned to Brian, a childhood friend who had become a corporate lawyer. When I explained my plan to him, he didn't hesitate. We set up a meeting for a few days later, where he introduced me to his cousin, Karen, a meticulous auditor. I laid everything out for them. My goal was to dismantle my company legally while still overseeing its operations. My hope was that Jennifer could eventually buy it back when the time was right. Over the coming weeks, Karen and I met regularly. Karen, a widow with a young son, had lost her husband in a tragic accident. She hadn't dated anyone since, and as we worked together, we grew closer. One evening, I invited her to dinner and a movie. "This is my first real date since my husband passed," she confided as we said our goodbyes. "I understand," I said gently. "I hope you enjoyed it." "I did," she smiled. "But remember, we work together, and you're still married." She gave me a soft kiss on the cheek. "Let's take it one step at a time." Before long, I convinced Melanie to trade in her car. At first, she resisted. She loved her Lexus. But when I suggested a BMW convertible might make her look younger, she eagerly agreed. Since the Lexus was fully paid off, I sold it for cash and took out a loan for the BMW, putting everything in Melanie's name. She thought she was just signing an ownership form, unaware that the paperwork contained clauses that would eventually cause her more trouble. I wasn't surprised when I overheard Kevin convincing Melanie to divorce me and take everything. What they didn't realize was that I was already several steps ahead. I knew about the BMW she let him drive, and how they used the backseat as their personal hideaway. I also knew Melanie had started seeing a divorce lawyer recommended by Levi, who had already been sniffing around my finances. With Melanie and Kevin so absorbed in their plans, I acted swiftly. First, I took out a second mortgage on the house to cover Jennifer's tuition in full. I knew that if the money was already allocated, they wouldn't be able to touch it. The following day, I filed for bankruptcy, setting things up so that Rebecca would change the locks on their house while we were still in New York. At the barbecue just before Jennifer left for college, Jennifer and I played our parts flawlessly. Levi and Rebecca, acting as though everything was fine, even helped with the grilling. They had no idea they were unknowingly contributing to our plan. Then, on Friday morning, while Melanie was in the bathroom, I grabbed her phone and quickly sent a message to Kevin. "I'll be at your place by 8. Let's have one last go. I'll say I'm running errands, so don't call or text. I'll leave my phone at home to avoid suspicion. Be ready, my future husband." After erasing the message, I slipped the phone back into her purse. Kevin wouldn't know what hit him. That evening, as Kevin entered his apartment, 3 men were waiting for him. They ambushed him the moment he walked in, forcing him to resign via email and tell his landlord he was leaving town. They ransacked his place, making it look like he'd fled. Drugged and disoriented, Kevin was taken away in a van and disappeared without a trace. I made sure no one else, not even Jennifer or Karen, knew what had happened to him. That was a secret I'd carry to my grave. By Friday afternoon, I was settled in a motel, chuckling as I watched the evening news. One of the men who'd been at Kevin's apartment showed up, handed over all the spy cameras, and collected his payment. I didn't ask where they had left Kevin. That part of the plan was theirs to handle. Saturday morning, I swapped my old phone for a new one, giving the number only to Jennifer. Then, I went to Karen's house. We spent the day going over the footage, carefully blurring Kevin's face in every clip. That night, I stayed in Karen's guest room, growing closer to her son and deepening my connection with Karen. She and I were ready for the next phase, which involved an elderly couple from Seattle, Karen's relatives, who agreed to buy the company, ensuring my employees' jobs would be protected. By Monday, everything was in place. Jennifer called, laughing as she told me Melanie was scouring the house looking for me. We shared a good laugh over it. Later, I uploaded the videos to a notorious website, using a throwaway email to send the link to everyone Melanie knew. Over the next 3 months, I stayed with Karen while the divorce proceedings played out. Though we continued dating, Karen made it clear that she wanted to keep things strictly professional until I was officially divorced. She reminded me that, despite everything, I was still technically married, and I respected her wishes, honoring my vows to the bitter end. Living with Karen had its advantages. To anyone who asked, I could truthfully say I was broke and staying with a friend while I rebuilt my life. On the day of the court hearing, Melanie didn't show up. With her car and house repossessed, and me claiming no income or assets, the judge granted our divorce with no support or asset division. Melanie's lawyer didn't object. After the hearing, I crossed paths with her lawyer in the hallway. "You're quite the strategist, Mr. Croftoon," he said, a faint smile on his lips. Back in the present, Jennifer tugged on my sleeve. "Dad, focus," she whispered with a grin. "Sorry, sweetheart. My mind wandered," I admitted, snapping back to the moment. "It's time for our father-daughter dance, and everyone's watching," she teased. Taking her hand, I spun her onto the dance floor. As we swayed to the music, I couldn't help but smile. When the song ended, Jennifer gave me a hug. I made my way over to Karen and asked her for a dance. Later, I wandered over to the bar, ordering a whiskey. "Good morning, Mr. Croftoon. This is Dr. James Gussman from Dallas, Texas. I'm calling about your ex-wife." "Melanie?" I asked, surprised. I hadn't heard her name in years. "Yes. I'm a psychologist working with her in her final days. She requested that I contact you." "Her final days?" I asked. "Yes, Mr. Croftoon. May I explain?" "Go ahead," I said, bewildered. "Your ex-wife shared her story with me, from her childhood to when you both met. She spoke of you as the only man she truly loved until she met Kevin, a mistake she deeply regrets. She believes you knew about the affair and masterminded her downfall. She accepts that she lost you and your daughter through her own actions. After the divorce, she left with only $200, trying to escape her past, especially after the videos of her affair went public. She ended up in Texas, working as a waitress in a trucker's bar by Interstate 20. Eventually, she became involved with the bar's owner, who allowed her to live in a dingy room in exchange for favors. She became pregnant, but had to undergo a risky procedure with no proper care. He later forced her into doing inappropriate work, and she contracted severe STDs and AIDS. Now, she's dying. Her last wish is to see you before she passes. "I'm sorry to hear that, doctor, but today is my daughter's wedding. I'll reach out next week. Don't wait too long, Mr. Croftoon. Here's my direct line if you need it." At the wedding, Karen hugged me and gave me a gentle kiss. "Easy on the drinks, love. You're our driver tonight," she whispered. "You're everything to me, darling," I replied, setting my drink aside. "I'd never risk your safety or our son's." She smiled and tugged me toward the dance floor. "Let's go. I want to feel you close." A few days later, I called Dr. Gussman from my office. "I won't be able to make the trip due to my schedule," I told him. He suggested a phone call instead, and a nurse brought the phone to Melanie's bedside. "Derek, is that really you?" she whispered, her voice frail. "Yes, Melanie, it's me." "Oh, Derek," she sobbed, barely able to speak. "I'm so sorry. Sorry for what I put you and Jennifer through. I'm facing the consequences now. I forgave you a long time ago, Melanie. I've moved on and am genuinely happy now. Actually, I owe you thanks. After our divorce, I married an incredible woman, and we have a son together. Jennifer considers her a mom, and they're close. By the way, Jennifer got married last Saturday, and her mom made sure everything was perfect. We're looking forward to being grandparents." I could hear her sobbing softly on the other end. After a moment, a hurried voice cut in. "Mr. Crofton, this is Nurse Emily. I'm afraid I have to end the call now." As the line went dead, I looked at the family photo on my desk and smiled. "He who laughs last, laughs best," I murmured to myself,